like the Deep in the Seven. Or some gun show freak like Firecracker. Homelander is so fragile.
If you've been watching The Boys from the very beginning, one question has probably haunted you from the start. A question that Gen V Season 2 quietly, almost slyly, brings to the surface. Why does the Seven, supposedly the greatest superhero team in the world, look more like a broken PR stunt than an actual force of power? Because for all their godlike powers, their world-shaking abilities, and their influence over politics, the truth is that the Seven haven't been about strength for a long time. They've been about control. And that's the part The Boys Season 5 might finally be forced to confront. And what's even crazier, it's Gen V Season 2's most disturbing villain, Thomas Godolkin, who ends up saying the quiet part out loud, the great lie of the Seven. When The Boys first introduced us to the Seven, they were painted as the pinnacle of the superhero ideal, the elite of the elite, Vought's golden gods, each member carefully chosen, packaged, and broadcast to billions. The lineup mirrored DC's Justice League on the surface. Homelander as Superman, Queen Maeve as Wonder Woman, Black Noir as Batman, the Deep as Aquaman, and A-Train as The Flash. But peel back the glossy posters and propaganda, and what you find is rot. The Deep, a walking HR violation. A-Train, a corporate liability with a heart condition. Translucent, dead in a bathroom thanks to Huey Campbell's improvised revenge. From the very first season, it's been clear that Vought's selection process has almost nothing to do with actual strength or heroism, and everything to do with marketability. The Seven aren't soldiers, they're advertisements. Walking, talking billboards for the American dream that Vought is selling. But the cracks in that illusion have only gotten deeper. By The Boys Season 4, the Seven weren't just dysfunctional. They were barely even functional as a team. Homelander ruled by fear, Firecracker was a hate-mongering media weapon, and the Deep was so far down the obedience rabbit hole, he could barely think for himself. So the question becomes, why? Why would Vought, a company built on the power of gods, deliberately weaken its own pantheon? That's where Gen V Season 2 steps in and quietly drops the most important clue in the entire franchise. Thomas Godolkin, the monster who's right. At first, Thomas Godolkin seems like just another deranged megalomaniac in Gen V Season 2, a man twisted by his own experiments, his mind warped by the corruption he helped create. But beneath all his delusions of a super utopia, there's a sliver of uncomfortable truth. In Episode 7, when Marie heals him and he begins his chilling monologue about power, Godolkin delivers one of the most quietly revealing observations in the entire Boys universe. He calls out the Seven for what they really are, a collection of mediocrity and compromise. A team where people like the Deep and Firecracker are celebrated not because they're strong, but because they're useful. Useful to Vought's narrative. Useful to the system that keeps supes obedient and humans in awe. And here's the scary part. He's right. Vought's version of heroism was never about merit or evolution. It's about control through illusion. You don't put the most dangerous or the most independent supes on the Seven because those kinds of people don't stay controllable. You put the ones who are easy to break, easy to blackmail, and easy to sell. That's why the Deep gets a spot. That's why Firecracker, a glorified influencer with a temper, can replace someone like Starlight. Thomas Godolkin may be a monster, but he's the first character in the entire franchise to say it plainly. The Seven were never designed to represent the best of supes. They were designed to represent the best illusion of power. Gen V's hidden setup for The Boys Season 5. And that brings us to where Gen V Season 2 leaves us. A world where Vought's illusion is crumbling. Libraries are shut down. Dissent is silenced. Homelander is no longer the secret tyrant. He's the face of open fascism. The Boys Season 4 already hinted at it, but Gen V confirms it. Vought isn't protecting humanity anymore. It's protecting the myth. And that's what makes the Seven's decline so deliberate. Because as long as the Seven remain messy, broken, and publicly flawed, Vought keeps control of the narrative. Think about it. If the Seven were truly powerful and united, they wouldn't need Vought. Homelander's God complex wouldn't allow oversight. Maeve, before her fall, questioned the system too often. Noir's silence was convenient until he started thinking for himself. So Vought does what all power structures do when the hierarchy is threatened. It sabotages itself just enough to stay in charge. The Seven becomes less about strength and more about symbolism. Controlled chaos. But now, with Starlight forming her underground resistance, A-Train flipping sides, and the Gen V heroes rising with abilities that far outmatch anyone on the Seven, that illusion is finally shattering. Because for the first time in this universe, there's a real team forming, one that fights for people, not publicity. And that's what The Boys Season 5 will have to confront, the fall of the myth. The Seven were never a team, they were a weapon. Every major event across The Boys and Gen V has hinted that the Seven were built not as protectors, but as tools of influence. Let's break that down. Homelander represents fear and dominance, the god complex that keeps both humans and supes in line. The Deep is humiliation incarnate, a man used as both a PR puppet and an example of what happens when you defy Vought. A Train represents guilt and dependency, a supe addicted to fame, constantly reminded that his career can be ended with a single heartbeat. Firecracker is propaganda, the living embodiment of how Vought monetizes outrage and misinformation. Black Noir, for all his silence, was the company's perfect soldier, deadly, loyal, and ultimately disposable. Starlight was the outlier, the only one who joined for genuine reasons and the first to see through the illusion. When you step back, the Seven aren't heroes. They're instruments. Each is designed to serve a different branch of Vought's influence: media, fear, faith, military, and control. That's why, even when the team collapses, Vought survives. Because the point was never to create a functioning team. It was to keep the public mesmerized by the spectacle. It's why every replacement member feels like a downgrade. Vought isn't failing. It's succeeding, because chaos and celebrity sell better than unity ever could. The Resistance, the real Seven. Here's the twist Gen V leaves us with. The Seven we've known were never the real team. The real one is forming right now, in the shadows. Starlight has gone underground. A-Train has joined her. Maeve is still out there. And given her conscience, it's only a matter of time before she steps back in. And then there's the new blood. Marie, Kate, Jordan, Sam, and Emma, the next generation of supes who actually care. They're messy, traumatized, and not nearly as polished as Vought's media darlings. But they have something the Seven never had: purpose. That's what makes the Resistance storyline so crucial heading into The Boys Season 5. It's not just another rebellion subplot. It's the natural consequence of Vought's long con finally backfiring. For years, Vought's greatest weapon was the illusion of choice, the idea that the Seven were saviors when they were really distractions. Now that illusion is breaking. The new heroes don't want sponsorships. They don't want to be worshipped. They just want the truth. And that makes them infinitely more dangerous to Homelander's regime than any nuclear bomb. Because when people stop believing in gods, gods lose their power. What The Boys Season 5 needs to answer. So now we're left with the franchise's biggest unanswered question, the one Gen V practically shoves into the spotlight. Why does Vought keep destroying the Seven from within? Is it incompetence? Or is it strategy? The easy answer is corporate greed. The deeper answer, the one The Boys Season 5 must explore, is psychological control. By keeping its heroes flawed and broken, Vought ensures that no one becomes too powerful, too independent, or too inspirational. It's not about having the strongest team. It's about having the most marketable dysfunction. Homelander's public breakdowns, ratings gold. The Deep's humiliations, viral content. Firecracker's hateful rants, political influence. Every scandal reinforces the cycle. Vought gets richer, the public stays divided, and the Seven remain the tragic circus act they were always meant to be. The end of the myth. But what happens when the myth finally collapses? That's what The Boys Season 5 is building toward, a world where Vought can't contain the chaos anymore. With Homelander's dictatorship rising, Starlight's resistance forming, and Soldier Boy's return looming, every thread is pulling toward one inevitable showdown: the fall of Vought's golden age. And when that happens, the Seven's existence will finally be exposed for what it truly was. Not a symbol of hope, but a reflection of every lie the world was willing to believe. Because in the end, the Seven were never about saving people, they were about keeping people distracted. Final thoughts: when The Boys began, the Seven was a parody of superhero culture. Flashy, cynical, and overexposed. But by the time we reach Season 5, they've become something far more haunting, a warning. A warning about what happens when the idea of heroes becomes a product. When power is commodified. When truth is buried under branding. Gen V doesn't just expand the Boys universe, it redefines it. It tells us that the next generation isn't just inheriting Vought's mess, they're rewriting it. And maybe that's the point. Maybe The Boys Season 5 isn't about ending the story of the Seven. Maybe it's about replacing them with a real team, one that finally lives up to the myth. Because in a world built on lies, the most dangerous thing you can be is real.